Welcome to Coffee, Eggs and Inspiration. In this edition I'm going to be talking to Jack Trigger, a professional sailor, a type 1 diabetic, and he's about to leave for a round the world solo journey on his yacht. I have to ask this question because they'll be thinking, what if you get it wrong?
Yes, that's...
So, I guess the headline question is, are you mad? You're going to spend 74 plus days, hopefully minus days, but in the order of 70 days at sea on your own with no landfall, and you're a type 1 diabetic. Talk me through that. How does that actually even work?
Well, it's never been done before, which is maybe an answer to your question, am I mad? In terms of, I don't think so. I think that's a pretty good reason to go and do it. We talk about this quite a lot when people ask that question. We say, if you were mad, you wouldn't get very far, because you need so much discipline to sail these boats, because they just tear themselves apart if you're not, if it's not under control, if you're not totally regimented about. And totally on top of your limitations, right? But probably a little bit mad.
Pioneer is probably the better description. I'm not a diabetic. Lots of people watching won't be diabetics. Some people will be. Tell me what the condition is and what that means for your sort of daily routine.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed when I was 21, 7 years ago, and I knew nothing about it before then. No family history. Came as a bit of a surprise. So it's mad how quickly you learn about something when suddenly you have to. And what it means is that effectively my pancreas doesn't produce insulin. And insulin is what we need to convert glucose in the bloodstream, which is a product of any time you eat any carbohydrate, it's broken down into glucose. To effectively convert that into energy that can be used by muscles. So without insulin, you can't survive, because your muscles can't get any energy, brain, organs, everything. So someone with type 1 diabetes doesn't produce their own insulin, so they have to administer it themselves. So generally that's by injection, or I use an insulin pump, which is a bit like injecting it, but it's connected the whole time, so it's a bit less hassle.
So is it integrated? Are you like a bionic?
Yeah, I have a tube connected to,
okay.
Sits just under the skin.
And you carry a vessel with...
Yeah, so that's the insulin pump.
Hold it up.
Yeah.
That's the
it's
insulin
pretty
pump.
cool. So
that's got insulin inside it?
Yeah, it's got a reservoir insulin, it's got a battery,
yeah,
and then it's just has like a linear drive plunger.
Right.
So I can type in the dose that I want.
You can give yourself a hit?
Yeah, and it will administer it.
How do you know you need a hit?
Right, so this is the next one. So a person doesn't need a constant amount of insulin the whole time. So you need insulin specifically to convert the glucose in your blood into energy. So you effectively need to match the amount of insulin you have to the carbohydrate that you eat. And what we're trying to achieve is there's an optimum range of level of glucose in the blood. And you're trying to stay within a low limit and a high limit. If you go below the low limit, then that's serious. So hypoglycemia.
So how does that feel? What happens?
So you start to feel, it manifests slightly differently in different people. And even people without diabetes possibly have felt very mild hypoglycemia at times. Hangover, you often have hypoglycemia with a hangover. So a bit shaky, maybe get a bit of brain fuzz. Your brain stops working because it hasn't got energy, right? And then if it goes lower than that, then unconscious, and then you die.
Okay.
So pretty serious. Yeah,
quite serious. And if it's too high?
If it's too high, it's not very nice in the short term. In the very short term, you can feel a bit lethargic. I sometimes feel a bit nauseous.
Yeah.
But the real risk there is in the longer term. So a slightly average high glucose over a number of years prevents the risk of complications like nerve damage, loss of eyesight. Really high glucose over a period of days can also be fatal. And that's because of a thing that we call diabetic ketoacidosis, which is when the body effectively poisons itself. It starts breaking down fat stores to account for the fact that it's not getting any energy from the sugar that's in the blood. You also try and flush the blood flush the glucose, high level of glucose out of the bloodstream. So you dehydrate. And then you get effectively blood poisoning.
Okay, so both of these things, the high end and the low end perhaps more severe than the high end, sounds quite serious and difficult to manage. And we're sitting in a couch in London. You're going to be on the Southern Ocean on a boat by yourself. I hope you're taking lots of insulin with you, I guess. I mean, how are you going to manage that?
Yeah, right. So, I guess what I'm saying is it's really important the challenge is to try and keep your range within those boundaries. And that's what you're doing every day as someone living with type 1 diabetes. I think that the study says, on average, we make between 180 and 300 extra decisions every day, compared to someone not living with the condition.
And so a diabetic will make 300 plus more decisions a day. Okay.
Yeah, and a number of those decisions are fairly life critical.
Right.
So it's high stress, and you're making those decisions, effectively trying to judge, what's the right dose for you at a given insulin for you at a given period of time. So how much carbohydrate have I eaten? How much insulin do I need to take to counter that? And on top of that, there are a number of other influencing factors that also influence your blood glucose level, and can also influence things like the absorption rate of the insulin. So air temperature, stress levels, how much you've slept the night before, all sorts of things that you're trying to take into account when you're. So it's difficult.
So this is really the extreme sports of diabetes.
Yeah, it is. Right? It's probably one of
temperature differences, stress.
Yeah, in terms of
lack of sleep.
Yeah, in terms of what good diabetes management likes, we don't have any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So there's how do you go tackle well? So when I was diagnosed, there were. I'd already left university to pursue a career as a professional sailor. So I was kind of like stubborn about it. I was going to do it. But there were rules in place that said that I couldn't go race around the world. And I was actually lucky enough that I was already connected with the doctors that had written those rules.
So you thought, what I'll do is I'll go sail around the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly what I thought.
And I assume a rule change was needed, so you spoke to the doctors.
So I spoke to the doctors, and I effectively consider myself quite lucky to be, incredibly lucky, that it wasn't just the fact that I was stubborn and said, I'm going to go and do this, that's allowed me to do it. It's the fact that the tools that we have available to us to manage the condition are phenomenal. And the rate of advance of those tools has just been insane over the last 5-10 years, and in the next 5-10 years. So the insulin pump, just as much as the insulin pump, I wear a glucose sensor on my arm.
Yeah.
You see more and more of these about nowadays. Most people have seen one before, kind of know what it is.
Is that permanently fixed, or is it?
It has an adhesive underneath it.
Yeah.
So I change it every 2 weeks.
Okay.
The last 2 weeks, and then there's a filament that just sticks under the skin.
Okay.
So that's taking glucose readings in real time.
Yeah.
And then I can take those readings on my phone. Whereas previously, I was pricking my finger to take a blood reading, which is an instantaneous sample.
Yeah.
If you're doing that a lot, you're doing it 10 times a day.
Yeah.
Glucose can change in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So not only is it not pleasant, but in terms of the data you have, less accurate.
Yeah.
And what can you do with 10 point references in a whole day's worth of ups and downs? And
so the technology's come a long way, right? So you are literally part man, part machine.
Yeah.
And I have to ask this question because they'll be thinking, what if you get it wrong?
Yes, that's. It's the same approach with the boat. It's the same approach with preparing for going racing. So you prepare yourself to get it wrong. And you try and set out the structure that says, what are my safe limits? And how much room do I have to get it wrong and still be within those safe limits? How I manage the condition on the boat is, I don't think I'm racing the boat and I'm managing diabetes, because I'm already oversubscribed trying to sail the boat on my own. So I just throw it all together. It's a management exercise. It's about prioritizing. It's about saying, what are my top 3 tasks at the moment? What's the priority? It could be changing a sail. It could be getting 20 minutes sleep so I make a better decision. It could also be treating a potential episode of hypoglycemia because I just did a load of physical activity that I didn't predict because I had to change set.
Right.
So if that moves to the top, and I'm strict about that, then I shouldn't have any problems, right? So that's the basis.
Yeah.
And then beyond that is, what if I get it wrong? So that's when I have a glucose sensor wired up to an alarm in the boat.
Right.
So the alarm will go off and
It'll
it'll
send
tell
an
me.
alert. Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's.
And will it send the alert externally as well? Will it notify? Probably a silly question. Will it notify the Coast Guard or whoever might be close by? Because you don't have a support crew.
No support crew.
Right. You're on your own.
Yeah. So TBC. So we're looking into doing that.
We should say that this is 2.5 years away.
2.5
So
years. Yeah.
Don't
Yeah,
be
exactly.
too alarmed.
Yeah, we are prepared. No, it's for different reasons. Great sending it off the boat, but no one can get to you. So you need to have the systems on the boat to deal with it, to manage it. If we're sending it off the boat, then it's about sharing the data for other reasons.
Yeah.
It's having redundancy in systems. It's having different batches of insulin on the boat in case one batch goes bad. It's about storing the insulin correctly on the boat. We have to look at temperature management, vibration management. So we're looking at developing new systems to get the insulin intact around the world because insulin can go bad. And then it's about the machines. If the insulin pump has a failure, it's about having a spare insulin pump. If the second one has a failure, then we have injections on board. So worst case scenario, I can still do injections. Two insulin pumps. Yeah.
iPod things.
Exactly. Yeah. My MP3 player with the wire.
Yeah.
And then having all of that in the life raft, in the grab bag. You've got to be prepared for that stuff.
Yeah.
You end up in the life raft and you've made it out of some terrible incident.
Yeah.
Low possibility, but let's say you get there and then suddenly you haven't got any insulin. It's pretty short-sighted.
So look, only 100 people in history have sailed solo around the world. That in itself is a pretty big achievement. Doing it for the first time as a type 1 diabetic, even more than that. What do you hope that will teach others or the medical industry about diabetes? Is there a takeaway you hope to achieve other than getting through it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the project is about so much more than going racing. And in terms of the partners that we're engaging with and that we have yet to engage with, it's important to have this authentic story. That I guess there are a few areas that are personal to me that are important, which is it's all about education and awareness about diabetes. Clearly a big thing is diabetes is generally diagnosed in people who are younger. So it's a message of hope, a message of not being limited by a condition like diabetes. Just trying to show people what you can go and do. No one has to go and sail around the world. That's just what I want to do, but and I already wanted to do that. So that's important. The awareness piece is really important because there's diabetes, not just type 1 but type 2, is a global epidemic, and it's growing at an exponential rate.
Type 2 is the one that's sort of brought on by unhealthy living.
It can be. It can be, yeah. So there's a genetic element to it as well. I mean, it's difficult because they're both called diabetes, but they're very different conditions.
Right.
But we can raise awareness around both of them.
Right.
And things like being able to spot the symptoms, and the symptoms of undiagnosed type 1 and type 2 can be quite similar. Can literally save lives. So that's an important piece to do. And then there's another one which I guess is super important to me, and works really nicely with what we're doing and the technological element, which is what I've talked about. The tools that we have available to us that allow us to go and do things like this have come around so quickly, and they're complex. We're talking about automated insulin delivery where the insulin pump connects to the glucose sensor. You end up with a closed loop, effectively an artificial pancreas. And for someone that's going from deciding their own doses and injecting themselves every day, that's a huge step in terms of taking on something that, these things are powered by machine learning algorithms.
Right.
It's very difficult.
They can do it more accurately.
Yeah, but it's very difficult for people to get their head around how that works and what that means for them.
Yeah.
So you can look at the data and you can say, well, this is better.
Yeah.
It's going to work better. People still don't use it. And that's because, I think it's a mixture, clearly because it's complicated and people don't understand it, but also because diabetes is so unique in the way that the patient has so much autonomy over. I'm pretty sure it's the only condition in the world where you get diagnosed with it, the next day you're making those decisions yourself. You're making the dosing decisions. Usually the doctor does that for you, right?
Yeah.
So there's inertia around uptake on those tools, on that technology.
Well, maybe I should take you down the road and introduce you to our DeepMind.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but there's no doubt there's crossover there, and I'm sure there's work being done. There is work being done in that space, and it's super exciting. But if no one's going to use it, people are scared of using it, then it's kind of pointless. So that's pretty important, I think, to go out and to show people that the technology works and what you can do when you have those tools.
Wow.
Just trying to share that message.
So many firsts, as well as some noble firsts in there. One of only 100 people who will have done this, maybe a few more than that. The only person ever. If I'm a brand sitting there watching this video, I'd be thinking, this Jack's I'm going to get some really good exposure from this. So if I'm a brand wanting to throw money at you and help you on your journey, how do I do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, get in touch with us, speak to us. It's such a versatile thing, and I think people often don't think of sailing and alongside some of the big commercial sports. But in terms of the value that we can create, it's in this really nice place where it's high tech innovation, elite sport, but it's also an adventure, and it's relatable. You can watch it as someone that's not into sailing. You can watch it as someone that's not into the technology, and you can relate to the fact that we go back to 1969 when the Golden Globe race, first person ever set to sail non-stop solo and unassisted around the world, Sir Robert Johnson. Same year that the moon landings happened.
July.
Yeah, and the public love the moon landings, obviously, but very difficult to relate to. Whereas Sir Robert Johnson gets off his boat in his jumper, and everyone understands what he's just done. Yeah. And before he did that, no one knew it was possible.
Yeah.
So it's this relatable adventure with this innovation tech sporting angle, and then we've got the health thing as well. And I think, again, a really kind of fortunate point in time where the communications technology we've got has come in such a long way, that there's just this potential for the sport to explode in terms of the content that we can produce, the live content that we can send off the boats. And I think post-COVID, the kind of appetite for that kind of content is it's just screaming for something like this. So I think the value piece is, I just think it's exciting.
I do too. And if only there were a platform where you could film the journey and post it, perhaps think about through the magic with a very good sales pitch, and through the magic of YouTube, of course, you'll see the details below for how you get in touch with Jack. For now, Jack Trigger, thank you very much.
Thanks, Craig. Well, an absolute pleasure to chat to you about all this, and thanks very much.